Welcome to Synced on Air. I'm your host, Angelique Robb, and today I have with me Mr. Scott Seargeant. Hopefully, I said your last name right, Scott. Um, and he is the owner of the company Sargent Landscape and Arboriculture. He is an international arborist and a licensed California landscape contractor. Welcome, Scott. How are you today?
I'm great. How are
Oh,
you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, thanks for joining us on the show and look forward to talking to you more about trees and being a landscape contractor because I can see that you're maybe walking a fine line between those two.
Definitely, definitely.
Well, good. Well, one of the things that's we had an arborist on here not too long ago. Well, it might have been 6 months ago. Um, and he talked about poor pruning practices and how, companies are pruning too much. And, I did some research on like urban trees and what the mortality rate is, and it's 50% or higher. Um, at our last event, we had Wei Zhang with the tree diaper, just started to do a lot more on trees because that's a pretty, high mortality rate for urban trees, and we need trees. So, what, maybe you can shed some light on what you see day to day and what are your concerns for the industry?
Yeah, in the urban setting, 50% doesn't shock me at all as far as mortality. Uh, I think a lot of the problem with the over pruning is the access to the chainsaw and how the chainsaw has evolved from this heavy piece of equipment back when I started, a few years ago, to where now they're very lightweight. You even have battery operated ones now that are, under what, 2.8 pounds or something like that. So the accessibility to a machine that can do the job quickly. The problem is I think we get a little chainsaw happy, and
Okay.
trees get over pruned for various reasons. And that's my biggest thing is like, why are you pruning? What is the need to prune? Is it clearance for sidewalk, for people don't hit their head or car or their trash truck doesn't rip off a limb? Um, those are some obviously legitimate reasons to prune, but you should have a pretty good reason to prune other than I need to prune to make money, so I can live, which is understandable. But I see it every day. I mean, yesterday I was looking at a tree that had a bunch of flagging. And so we took some samples and sent it into the lab, waiting for the results. But it's like I got up into the tree, take samples, and there's nothing but heading cuts everywhere, and the tree is bushed out. And you could definitely see how the disease was attached to all of these heading cuts or topping cuts. So
Yeah.
I really think that the chainsaw plays a big part, and I do. I mean, I do my fair share of pruning, but it's not. It's usually for corrective reasons. The tree's been over pruned, and believe it or not, I have not used a chainsaw in over 3 years.
Wow.
I use all hand saws because when I get tired, I'm done. Right? I mean, the you think about it. Is it okay? I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this, and then but I see so many people, especially like homeowners, they come outside and they start whittling a little bit and they keep whittling. All of a sudden,
It's
you got nothing left.
unrecognizable.
And
Yeah.
so you got to look at your tree, know why you're pruning, step back after you pruned a little bit, and take an assessment. But the other thing is that people are very naive to the anatomy and physiology of trees. Um, I mean, we really only have three main organs in a tree, so it's not like we got to learn like the human body or anything.
Yep.
Uh, but there's such a disconnect between understanding how trees live, how trees grow, how trees survive, how they protect themselves. And if we really, really knew those, we wouldn't be making these topping and heading cuts and all these things. I mean, I got a call, another call, and this happens frequently. It's like, I left the hose on, and I soaked the roots for 3 weeks, and the trees, leaves are falling off. Obviously, I stopped the leak, or I stopped the hose, whatever it was, and I called the nursery, and they said fertilize it. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the last thing you want to do is fertilize something that has a weakened root system. So anyway, I see so much that's misinformation, but it all basically boils down to um, we need to stop at a certain point, know why you're pruning. And Dr. Shigo would say most of your pruning cuts can be done in 3 cuts on most trees. And that's a bit of a challenge, but I understand what he was saying. It's just like, don't over prune.
Yeah. Well, and I guess, what do you say to like you said, the homeowners are often wanting
Uh-huh.
things cut a certain way, and they think that they know what's best. They want it topped, or, you know, how should we as a landscape industry push back on that in the nicest possible way?
And then exactly. And so you got to have a lot of tact. Being a consultant, you got to have a lot of tact. So I tell people, I educate them. And a lot of times I'll educate them, and I'll give them a bit of the science, and then I'll equate it to an everyday situation. So it's like, okay, you put too much water on, now the tree's not going to be able to take up oxygen. That's like you jumping in your swimming pool and not being able to take a breath. You either got
Oh,
to get some air, right? Or
yeah.
you're going to drown. So you're drowning your tree because the roots need oxygen. And they go, I thought trees give off oxygen. I says, well, they do in the leaves, but the roots actually need the oxygen. And so that's kind of what I do. I try to put it in very simple terms, but I also give them a little bit of the science so that they know that I'm not just throwing out a bunch of hogwash, because I see it so much. Oh yeah, the other guy told me to, fertilize it, or they told me to water it, and then I call back and they say, well, no, maybe don't water it. I mean, people
Mm.
maybe they mean well, but we really need to study trees from anatomy and physiology so we can understand how they work.
It's funny that what you're saying is, it's kind of like you need to know not just what happened to the tree, but like the environment that it's been in. And we had something happen. This is when I was in Scotland, had my landscape design company, but we had a lot of clients, evergreen conifers, get brown spots, and this is springtime. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and what's funny, and I guess it was eye-opening to me, because um, the nursery that I used to supply a lot of our trees, I went back and said, hey, I'm seeing this, and it wasn't everything that we were planting. It was mature conifers. And they were like, do you remember that really dry spell we had in the winter where it didn't rain for like 6 weeks and it was unusually dry? Well, that is only coming out now in the form of the trees suffering. And I think that makes it really hard to diagnose what's happening, if it can be from months ago, or it can be, maybe a leak in the neighbor's water supply, or, like it's a bigger issue than just the tree and its
Yeah,
immediate surroundings.
exactly. And if there isn't an acute symptoms right after we do something, then we don't equate it with what we did. So um,
Like these
when
cuts that get
yeah,
disease. I mean,
exactly, we have a lot of valley oak trees which grow enormous here, the Quercus lobatus, and they get so much bad pruning and stuff. And so when I see one like that, I I put a mental timetable on it. It says, okay, 8 to 12 years, this one's going to fall over. And, and gosh, I'm right. I mean, about 80% of the time, it's just, because I know what's going to happen. It's like over pruning causes epicormic growth and sprouts, and the tree is using stored energy, like our fat in our body. Trees have stored energy that
Yeah.
they use for situations when they need to grow or when they can't make a lot of food. And what people don't understand is a pruning cut is an injury, and the tree has to replace that. So it takes stored energy to grow new limbs and leaves so that they can photosynthesize and then give back. And that is a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. So yeah, what we do to trees many times shows up weeks, months, years later.
Wow. Well, and you mentioned epicormic growth. So that's when it starts sprouting from the base, from the kind of the tree flare, the trunk flare. Is that right?
Actually, it can
Or it can grow
trees
anywhere?
have hidden buds, let's just say, and they also have regions with meristematic tissue, which means basically that it can grow a new shoot or root, depending on where it is. So, and these are kind of hidden in the tree. I say hidden; they're just dormant in the tree, right? They're
Okay.
not. Some are buds, but some are actual regions that could produce a bud. All right, now they're actually the tree's old age pension. So
Oh,
yeah, it's like the savings account, right? Okay. And when the tree gets a certain age, it's going to start to shrink back, right? And so it'll push out these. Or if a limb splits off or cracks off or gets over pruned, the tree's going to say, hey, I've got all these extra buds that are hidden. We need to push some out. The
okay.
problem is if they're truly from a meristematic region, then they are not attached very strongly. And they grow really quickly, which means they're taking a lot of energy from other parts of the tree. But their epidermis is thin. So they don't photosynthesize quite as much. So it's like that person that comes over and is always eating at your house, always eating at your house, but you never eat at their house. Once in a while, you know what I mean? It's like these epicormic growths. They say, "Give me. I'm gonna someday be worth something to give you back energy, but right now you got to give me, give me, give me, give me,
So
so
they
I can
take a
grow."
lot from the
They
tree.
do, and they grow really long, and then they don't always grow in the right. They can grow at a 90-degree angle, or 60, or 30, or they can grow a lot of times straight up, and so their attachment is weak. They grow fast. They get a lot of the food from the tree because they're crying, "Hey, I need to grow to give us back energy." So they get out there, and then they split off. I just found two last week, limbs that were pruned, stub cut, epicormic growth growing out, and then these limbs are 3 to 4 inches in diameter in about three to
Okay.
four years, and crack, boom, bang. One of them, I was right in front of a car, and the car had to swerve. Luckily, nobody was injured. Um,
Wow.
the guy who lived in the neighborhood when I was out there, because I take samples all the time. I mean, I see a limb down, and if it's in the street, I'll pull it out of the way, then I'll cut it up, and I'll look in, and I go, oh, and kid you not, 80, 90% of the time, I find an old pruning cut that is the cause of the
Just
problem.
above where the
Right
break.
at where the pruning cut. See, when they make a stub cut, there's a certain amount of dieback, but because trees have a way of protecting themselves from rot, the tree usually limits that. But it's a little cone shaped up to the cut. So you have the cut and then a cone shaped area of dead. But the tree puts on new growth on the outside and then puts on epicormic growth. And so it's literally attached to only a few cells in the beginning of live tissue. And usually over about 2 or 3 years, it's only a very thin amount that it's attached. You can take it and pull
And
it
it's
right
getting
off.
heavier and heavier. And
Yes. And then
yeah.
cracks. The other thing is that when we prune and we over prune and we get new growth, the limbs that are supporting the scaffolding are used to taking weight as the tree grows naturally from determined buds. Now, when we get a stub cut and then we get something growing out, maybe at a different angle, now we have torque. All right. So now the tree's
Yeah.
used to getting this, right? Weight straight down. And now it has to grow a limb this way. And now we have torque, which is twist. So
Yeah.
just think of holding
Yeah, that's when
us.
you can hurt your back if you like
Yeah.
twist in a funny
Mhm.
way and bend down to pick something up.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Hold 50 pounds of rice and then turn like this and try to give it to somebody and see
yeah,
what sprains. Now you can give it straight out fairly easy, but twist and give, and something may or may not, pop or strain. So we have all these things to think about when we prune. Um, and most guys are just say, I want to get in, get out, get my money, and go to the next one. So we got some education to do, definitely.
yeah. Well, and you know, with I'm in the South, you're on the West Coast. We need our trees to protect us
Absolutely.
from the heat and we need them, to protect the soil, to keep the soil in place. And so it really upsets me. I mean, I see just the volcano mulching everywhere, and that's on newly constructed landscapes that the
Yeah.
trees have just gone in, and it makes me cringe because I'm like, I know that tree, it's a pretty good sized trees that they're putting in.
Mhm.
Um, you know, a couple $1,000s each, all the wasted time growing these, and I
Mm.
know that they're slowly dying.
Yes.
Um, and and I can't find, I actually, it was a friend of my daughter's that I was dropping her off at a friend's house, and I told the dad, I was like, this tree is dying. Who can I
Mhm.
tell here about this? It's in his yard. And he's like, well, it's the homeowners association, but maybe it's the builder. I don't even know who to tell. And, from his point of view, he was like, well, I'm renting. I'm not, here for long. And so
Right.
I just felt like, oh my goodness, there's nobody that I can even tell that cares about this.
And
Like,
that
what do we
that's
do?
yeah, that obviously we can't save them all, but we definitely need to be a little more proactive in our education, not only just homeowners and tree trimmers, but our elected officials. When we have street trees that we've paid tax dollars to install, and then they get pruned incorrectly, and then we get that 50% or 40% or 70% mortality. Um, then if we don't have a way of protecting the trees or protecting the homeowner or our urban forests, or a way to um, what's a good word, um, to keep people from doing that, whether
Yeah.
it's fines, whether it's laws we have to pass, whatever. I know a lot of cities say you need to go by the ISA standards, but I don't even see that being followed. And you know what I mean?
Mm.
As an organization, I don't know. I can't speak for the
How do
ISA
they police it? Yeah.
whether they police it themselves. I mean, I know I used to call in to see if people were ISA because they say, "Oh yeah, I'm certified," and I'd call in to find out. And after a while, it's like even that doesn't do any good. So um, if somebody can get away with it, they will. If somebody doesn't know, they can be taught.
Oh,
And that's kind of my platform right now. Is if you go on some of my social media, you'll see that I'm basically giving away information for free, so people can start to realize, hey, these things are living, you know,
it,
entities that
yeah.
we need to protect.
We need to understand more, and it's not just a perennial. And I say just a perennial, but perennials in general are shorter lived, and they give off seeds to propagate themselves, and trees are I think, it is harder to understand. Like moving back to the Louisiana from the UK, we have this beautiful live oak in our front yard. And that was one of the things that I was like, oh yes, we have to have a live oak somewhere in our yard.
Sure.
Um and I had a tree preservation company come out and look at it, and he was like, way too much soil on top of live oaks have their exposed roots on the ground. And he was like, these have been covered up too much. These need to be excavated. You need your soil level down to here. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. And I didn't even, raise it. But, like, so that
Mhm.
was important. And then I was like, and how do you know what it needs? Because trees don't like plants. You can see if they start to wilt in the sun, like they need water or they need shade or something, but trees don't give you as much of a stressor. So it's interesting that you were talking about the apicormic growth. I think that is a really good sign, because I wondered that myself, seeing like a tree that's maybe 10 years old and it's not doesn't look very healthy, but it has all this apicormic growth
Mhm.
at the base
Mhm.
of the tree and is
Yeah,
very distinctive looking. And I was like, that something's not right there. Now,
exactly. That's one of the first things I look at when I drive up to a client's house who has a tree. Maybe it's in the front yard, maybe it's the backyard. I always challenge myself to see what symptoms I can see first. Um, and the thing is unfortunately, when trees are trimmed, they're not trimmed to the tree's natural shape, and so we've lost that. I mean, weeping willows are skirted, valley oaks are skirted, trees are topped that should have a leader. So when I go up and I see that they're not in their natural shape, okay, I already know, okay, this tree's been pruned probably incorrectly, and then I look the trunk and I get out and I look at the trunk and I look at the branches, and the first thing I look for is epicormic growth.
mhm.
Because if epicormic growth is at the bottom, that generally means we have some type of trunk injury, or if they're
Is
on the
that
trunk.
okay?
So, and it could be something like borers. It could be borers. It could be disease. It could be, the little kids playing with a hatchet and chopping. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Um, could be gaffs from climbers. They stick in the tree as they climb up.
Okay.
I don't even own. I've never owned a pair of gaffs. I don't see the purpose of those um, personally. Um, so
Well,
that's one of the things I look at, is that, and then I ask a series of questions to the homeowners, and they always say no in the beginning, and then they start thinking about it, and I says, "Has anything changed? Did you recently move in? Did you trench something? Did you was it pruned recently? What happened?" And a lot of times, like, "Oh, no, no, I don't think so." And then they'll come out of the house. Well, you know what? Yeah, we had a sprinkler leak over there, and then we had a trench over here, and right across the root systems,
the
things like
root
that.
system,
And so you
yeah.
you start to build a picture, because if you don't, you can't ask the tree, other than the tree will give you signs and symptoms, but it doesn't speak. And so you have to ask the owner, or maybe even the
Yeah.
neighbor, because sometimes the neighbors know a thing or two.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it
um,
could be something that happened in the neighbor's yard too.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
So
it's funny when I really think, well, I don't know, but like I have some neighbors that have said, "Oh, water oaks in South Louisiana are the big problem. We need to just take out all the water oaks because they always fall down in a hurricane." And but it's funny because similar to you, I was like, after we had a storm come through, every water oak that was down had disease, and you can see it when it's fallen over and you can see the root system. Um, and they all had some form of disease. And I wondered how much of it is um, whatever introduced it, soil conditions or poor pruning, but disease gets in, and now this tree has a bad reputation because people say not to do this, but
Right.
are we wrong to say those kind of things, that this is a bad tree, or maybe it's just poorly looked after and we need to be
Yeah,
more responsible?
that's the thing. You got to take the trees in their natural setting, and that's hard to find nowadays. A truly natural setting, and study them in that situation where no one's pruned them, no one's trenched around them. They get just seasonal rain. Nothing has changed in their environment since they were, the little acorn or the little seed. And study those and look at the natural injuries that it gets. Look at the insects that infestation that maybe they survived. Look at those type of things. And then you can go to your urban tree and your oaks and stuff like that, because I have the same situation here. I mean, there's huge giant oaks, and yes, once in a while they, in the natural setting, they will crack and fall over, but there isn't many natural settings anymore where I live. There's farm ground, and oh, that's natural, isn't it? Farm ground. I said, no, that's not natural. I mean, that land has been leveled, it's watered to excuse me, it's watered to the crop, not to the tree, and it gets rot, and they're going to fall over. And yes,
Mm.
in town, I mean, you don't know how many times I've come over and looked at, somebody's called me, says, "Oh, I had a big limb fall out of my tree, and can you go over and tell me, is my tree safe?" And I go, "It's a valley oak, and where I live, if someone's pruned it, no, it's not safe. But I'll come over and take a look." And they can
Mm.
trace almost every single limb failure to a pruning cut.
Wow. That's pretty powerful. And I think as an industry, we need to be more aware of what we're doing, and teaching the rest of the people around us. Because again, I mean, you know, that's huge. If we're the cause of the mortality rate, um, then, well, the good news about that is that it's controllable and we can change that. But the bad news is that we have a lot of people to talk to.
We do, and I'm just started on my education program. Pretty soon I'll have a blog, and pretty soon I'll be speaking. Um, and
Well, you're speaking at Sync Live, aren't you?
true,
Yeah.
this is my second talks in a couple months. But so yeah, I'm putting that forward because I've done I've done a lot of it locally, and I used to tour you know, a lot and speak, especially when I wrote a book and toured on that, and I have spoken at several places. So I'm trying to get back to that.
Mm.
Raise the kids. They're out of the nest, so to speak. Now it's time to go back um, and start educating people on trees, because I think we've lost a lot. I think we've lost touch with what is out there. I mean, kids nowadays are indoors way more than they're outdoors. And when I was a kid, so if you did something wrong, you got sent to your room, right? Go to your room.
Yes.
And nowadays, if a kid does something wrong, you tell them to go to their room. Great,
They're
I've got my
happy.
room. I can play games, I can call my friends, I can do whatever I want from my room. But
Yeah.
so things have changed, and we aren't in touch with that
Mm.
as nearly as much. We're not outside as much. We can't play in the front yard anymore. We can't do this. We can't do that. So um, we definitely need more education, and at the young level. I mean, when I take my samples into a group of third graders, I mean, they are just so blown away. Like, oh, and that,
Well,
look
there's
at
a
that.
lot of science to it. Like you said, I mean, you educate people on the science part. And that's how we got to know you, is through your LinkedIn post. And, it
Right,
was so educational and so detailed about the science. And I think, you know, it's one thing to say, okay, we're printing too much, but it's another thing to give the reasons why, and
right,
to say it's weakening the tree and you can physically see the signs, and the fact that you won't see the tree die in a year's time, but you will see it in 10 years time. I mean, those are really powerful, statements that should help people pay attention and not
Absolutely.
think, oh, that's extra work. Um, we are stewards of the plants that we plant. So you did say something because you're also getting involved with some articles in the Synced publication as well.
Yes,
And what I like what you've talked about is, let's talk about inspecting the roots or the tree roots before you even plant it, and then talking about planting it, and then don't walk away. You made a point of saying you plant it, and most people walk away and they
right.
don't ensure establishment. So, I mean, what can you say on those things? And we're going to have more photos and details in our next issue, but
Sure.
give them a highlight.
Yeah. So from selection to establishment is I believe kind of what we really need to focus on. And I'll go to nurseries to select plants, and I always, when I do a landscape or somebody wants trees, I always hand select them. I'll go to the nursery and hand select, and I will pull them out of their container, much to the chagrin of the nursery owners. But the ones who know me know that if I come in to buy plants from them, I'm going to look at the ones I want, and
Yeah.
start at the roots, because if the roots aren't good, forget it. If you've got girdling roots, if you've got suckers coming out of the base,
Mm.
you're going to have just all these problems. So I start there. I just see if it's root bound down below. How long has it been in the can? Nowadays, trees fortunately turn over pretty quickly, but during economic downtime, we don't buy as many trees. They sit in the container, they girdle, they get passed
Asking
on.
for trouble. Yeah.
Right. And the other thing that's a practice around the world, when it's funny, when I made this post on LinkedIn, I got some saying that this is a common practice in nurseries around here, topping the young seedlings. I got one from Germany and Japan and Korea and India, and I think maybe somewhere up Scandinavia area, saying that yeah, it happens here too. So
Uh,
the what happens is in the nursery, a tree gets a certain height, and then they cut it, and then it branches out, and it looks nice and big, this little lollipop head, and people think that's the tree to buy. When in fact, a tree that hasn't been topped, that looks a little bit what they would call a Charlie Brown tree, although it's not. It just has a central leader, and it's like I look for those all the time, and I go, "You got any untapped trees?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, we got some in the back we haven't got to yet." I said, "Don't touch them. Let me go get them. Let me look." And then most of the time,
uh,
it's not a super bad thing, but many times it is, because again, it's going to grow some epicormic growth or push some buds, and there are going to be too many growing in one spot, and it looks great, but
it's not good for
eight,
the
10,
long term.
8, 10 years later, crack, boom, bang, we got a limb split out. And what's worse than losing 12 years of growth when the tree's in the front yard and
Oh,
blocking that 107 degrees, 101 degrees, and then half of it's laying on the ground.
yeah.
You
And then
can't get
it's
time back.
misshapen, and it could split and damage the trunk and
Yeah,
introduce disease. And
yeah. And
mm,
one of the things that I have planned is to start a seminars on early tree care. And if you, let's say you have a job but you want to do something different, but you got to have the job, right? I'm going to teach people how they can start in the tree business with hand pruners and a handsaw. They don't need anything else. They don't need a ladder. They don't need a rope. They don't even need a car, if they don't mind walking a little bit. And
hmm,
to get us started, obviously it can't be big trees. It's going to be small trees. Early tree care. I did that during the big boom after the turn of the century around here. Everything went crazy, and there was thousands and thousands of homes with 5 to 7 trees planted on there. And what did I do? I went around, clip here, 4 times a year. I went and I treated their trees, whatever they needed, whether from if they had bugs, or if they need a little fertilizer, they need a little pruning. And I was busy 24/7. So I
Hmm.
want to teach people how to do that. And then if I can teach people how to do that
Then
and
the
they can
trees have a
make
good
money
start.
doing it correctly,
Yes.
you see, there's a story where I trimmed this guy's tree. It was a cork oak, and I trimmed it and I got down and I went home. And then he came home and he called me up. He says, "Get over here right now." I says, "I thought you were going to trim my tree." I did. He goes, "Get over here." He was upset because he had prepaid me, right? He goes, "I paid you good money to trim my tree, and it doesn't look like it's pruned." And I said, "Well, thank you for the compliment." And he goes, "What?" I said, "Thank you for the compliment. My aim is to trim the tree to the tree's natural growth, and so that when you get home or when you look at the tree, it doesn't look like it's been pruned." He
Mm.
goes, "I don't believe you." So I had to physically go up the tree and point to where the cuts that I made. He says, "Whoa, well, it does look really good." And so again, through education and through because that's not used to that. He's used to somebody lopping it off and have all these hat racks sticking up in the air. Um, and I was a client for his. He was a client of mine for a good 10, 12 years till he moved to the coast and retired. So and that's the thing. I have clients for 25, 30 years. My oldest client just moved into a retirement home. And so I'm no longer take care of her, but I started trimming her stuff in 95. I have another one that I still do. And again, 30 plus years. I have a lot of those clients. They just,
Awesome.
some of them, they just, you know what to do. You do it on your schedule and bill me. And that's a really nice feeling. I mean, when
Yeah.
you are in charge of this estate and you're in charge of their trees, and it's a big responsibility because when you're in charge of a lot of them and then you get a nice sized landscape, now your time is split. And yeah, I work 10, 12, 14 hour a day, especially in the summertime, just trying to catch up. But I love it. And then I love the challenge. I love being able to diagnose something, whether it's by myself or through a lab, and then get the results and then make a plan. And
Mm.
um, I have some clients that trees were near death, and I've been able to bring them back, and they're thriving. Not all the time. Sometimes the tree dies, and nothing I can do or say that
That
will
would
bring it
correct
back
it.
to life.
Yeah.
But I take pride and joy in being able to take someone's tree that they're doing something wrong to, or something was wrong, pruning cuts
Along the way. Yeah.
along the way. And I'll tell somebody, well, they pretty much butchered your tree. She says, fix it. I go, okay, it's 3 to 5 years. And I go, really? I got 3 to 5 years before I get this tree back to uh, a,
What it should be.
a decent, but it's not going to ever be exactly the same. It's like, breaking your leg and then trying to go back and
Mm.
play sports. It's probably going to work, but it's maybe you're not as fast, or maybe something isn't quite as good. So I always let people understand that I am not a miracle worker, but I will do my best. And so, anyway,
I think
that's
you
the challenges.
Yeah, no, this is great info, and I think there's so much that we could delve into. Um, but so the listeners know, you will be at Sync Live talking about how we can do better with tree care. We're also going to do some articles in our publications, and I think I remember at Sync Live 2023, I think it was. Angelica Norton, she's from Austin, and she on stage talked about how, she's a landscape architect, but they also construct in-house, and that this arborist, they were going to work together because I can refer you, you can refer me. But she
Right.
said they had totally different objectives for the landscapes, and so, you know, whenever the different disciplines in our industry don't see eye to eye, it can really cause um, detrimental effects. And I think that that's what's so great about how you're working, that you're doing both, so you can see both sides of the coin, and you're willing to teach people. So yay.
Yeah, yeah. See, being a consultant, I also do work, but my main thing is that being a consultant, and my main objective is the tree,
Okay.
whatever it needs, which is different than other people who make money off of trees. And so people need to live, they need to eat, but I think we all could do better. I can do better. So that's part of my platform, is to teach people correct ways. And when don't always reach for the chainsaw, sometimes a handsaw is all you need. And I know
Mm.
people are going to go, oh, it's going to take me extra time. How nice it is when you're up in a nice big tree, and it's tall, and you're up there, and there's no noise, so there's no chainsaw buzzing, and I mean it's nice. I mean, sometimes I'll eat my lunch up there in a tree. It's just nice. Sometimes it's a little noisy, with a lot of cars and stuff, but man, you're up there, and all that oxygen's coming in, and I just hate to ruin that. And plus, it scares all the birds away, and it scares everything that's associated with a tree.
The
When
people.
you fire, yeah, you fire up that chainsaw, and birds fly away, and everything's gone. And so I don't know. I mean, like I'm trimming this tree, and with a handsaw, and I cut a small limb, and I send it down, and I look, and there's a hummingbird about 4 feet away, just buzzing at me like, don't ruin my home. So yeah, you get those kind of moments, and I think they're pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, how can any of our audience, if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
The best way would be, my website's not finished yet, and I'm
Maybe
struggling.
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn would be perfect. I'm on
Okay.
Facebook. You can look me up. I'm in Visalia, California. Sergeant is spelled a little different. It's like Seargeant, like but if you type in international arborist or Visalia, California arborist, I should come up. Um,
Awesome. Well, and
so
we will put your email address
yeah,
in the
fine.
show notes,
Sure.
and yeah, and then hopefully when your website is up and running, you can let me know and I can add that too. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show today, and look
You're-
forward to meeting you in person sometime.
yes, yes. Thank you
Yes.
for. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Have a great time. Okay.
All right. Bye bye.